Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning.
It is good to sing a new song together, even if that new song is also an old song. It is good to be together with you in this virtual space, those of you who are watching online in all the various places that you are watching. I hope that you will say hi in the chat so everyone knows that we are together, and continue to participate in the chat throughout the service, because I do love seeing it. And we will be using Mishkan Tefillah. Jason, as he always does, has so generously put in the Facebook chat already the link to the flip book for Mishkan Tefillah if you want to follow along that way, or if you have a copy at home, and we'll call out page numbers as we go. And we are going to continue with Ma Tovu on page 74.
Adonai Tratzon, Elohim Beroch Hasrecha, Elohim Beroch Hasrecha, Aneni Be'emet Yishecha,
Pray with me in the middle of the page on page 77. Don't let me fall as a stone falls upon the ground, and don't let my hands become dry as the twigs of a tree. When the wind beats down the last leaves, and when the storm raises the dust from the earth with anger and howling, don't let me fall. I have asked for so much, but as a blade of your grass in a distant wild field lets drop a seed in the lap of the earth and dies away, sow in me your living breath as you sow a seed in the earth. Baruch atah Adonai rofech kol basar umafli la'asot. Having thanked God for our bodies, we now thank God for our souls. We talked some in Gems of Torah this morning about this prayer, Eloheinu Shema, on page 78, which is a prayer about reminding ourselves every morning that our soul is pure, and by extension that we can live to be our best selves today. And by the end of the day, we can look back and think of the moments that we lived to be our best selves and the moments where we failed to be our best selves, and know that tomorrow we get another shot at it, that each day we awake with a clean slate, ready to make the best choices we can and be the best people we can be. So we pray these words, Eloheinu Shema shenatata bi tehora hi, the soul you have given me, God, is pure.
Eloheinu Shema shenatata bi tehora hi, Eloheinu Shema shenatata bi tehora hi, Eloheinu Shema shenatata bi
We continue with Nisim B'chol Yom, the blessings for daily miracles, which begin on page 80. I'm going to encourage you, as I always do, to write any miracles that you have experienced this day or this week in the chat on Facebook or on our webpage. What's a blessing for a miracle you've seen? We'll pause and share any of them out. But remember that we're on a bit of a delay. So if you're thinking, this might be the day I write a miracle, don't wait. Write it soon so that we can share it with everyone. We continue at the top of page 80.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sech bivina, lehavchin ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, זוקף כפופים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, רוקה הארץ על המים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המכין מצעדי גבר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מלביש ערומים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, הנותן לי יעף כוח. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המעביר שינה מעיניי ותנומה מעפעפיי.
A couple of blessings in the chat. Karen is grateful for the blessing. It's Maharuch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, for finding green leaves on her previously thought to be dead plants. Amen to that. And Liz is grateful for Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, for reconnecting with her brother after 5 years. So wonderful to hear. And Aaron is grateful, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, for the pleasure of learning new things. Amen to that. These are beautiful. I'll add one. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, for the biggest miracle in our house, and we should thank God for the big miracles and the small miracles. The biggest miracle in our house is that one of the babies that was constipated is not constipated anymore, and that is a thing for which we are all grateful, especially her. Barbara, do you have one? Oh, you're muted.
I'm not sure I can top that one, but
yeah, I mean,
Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, for the flowers that survived the freeze.
Amen. And Alice writes that Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, that she will be seeing her son soon. These are all such beautiful miracles. I'm sure there are miracles that you are thinking about in your own places and spaces, wherever you are, for all these miracles in our lives, for the miracles of new life, for the miracles of things working as they should be, for the miracles of seeing family after a long time and reconnecting with family after a long time, for the big miracles in our lives and the small miracles of our lives, for the miracles we notice and the miracles that we don't notice, for the ones that sneak past us. For all these blessings, we all say Amen. And we continue at the top of page 84. Barbara, you're muted again. It is the Zoom thing to be.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, she'asani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, she'asani bat chorim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, V'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
So our study text for this morning. So I said last night, and I'm continuing this trend that I started last night. What I wanted to do for the poetry that I brought this morning to supplement our service and was to use the new Reform Haggadah. So just in the last month or so, was released this new Haggadah for Passover this year called Mishkan HaSeder. It continues the Mishkan series. We have Mishkan Tefillah for our services this morning. We have Mishkan HaNefesh for our services on the High Holy Days, and now we have Mishkan HaSeder, and it matches in sort of form and function those other books. But what makes Mishkan HaSeder so unique and so incredibly beautiful, and if you haven't had a chance to pick up a copy, I highly recommend it. I know this. I don't know the Sisterhood gift shop's hours, but I do know that they have some. Is that the focus is really on poetry, on using poetry to elucidate the themes of the Haggadah, and I love that. I've talked before about why I bring so much poetry to services. And one of the reasons that I bring so much poetry to services is that we have this challenge in sort of our modern post-Enlightenment way of thinking, that we tend to look at books and we ask ourselves, is this fiction or non-fiction? Is this true or not true? Did it happen or not happen? And that may work really well for most of the books that you pick up at a bookstore. But it doesn't work particularly well for this book, for a prayer book, and it doesn't work particularly well for a Torah, and it doesn't work particularly well for a Haggadah. It is not, you're not able to categorize a prayer book or a Haggadah into the categories of fiction or nonfiction. Because there is a lot of truth in those books, even if some of those things didn't happen, even if the prayers that we say we don't necessarily think are going to happen in the way that they describe, we understand that there is truth there. And so the power of poetry, in my mind, is that poetry is one of the places where we escape the limitations of that dichotomy between true and false, between fiction and nonfiction. If you read a poem that says, "Two roads diverged in the woods and I took the path less traveled," you do not think to yourself, oh, was there actually a road, and did they diverge, and did he actually take the path, and what happened, and was he hungry? And right, that's not the task that you engage in when you look at poetry. The task is what do I have to learn from this? How is this speaking to me on this day? What is the author trying to get me to feel or experience or think or change? And so I think there's a real power in engaging with poetry, and I think that the Reform movement's great contribution to this project of making new Haggadahs is to really bring this focus on poetry. There are tens of thousands of Haggadahs. That these two shelves, this shelf and this shelf, are both Haggadahs in my collection. And there's a lot of them, but there's none like this, because this one really uses poetry. So what I've done today at 3 places or 4 places throughout the service is bring you a poem from this Haggadah. So if you haven't picked it up yet, to engage with it. And the first one, I'll very digress, but the first poem I brought is for this section now where we're supposed to be studying a little bit. So I want to share with you this poem, and what I find really powerful about this poem in the context of prayer is that this poem is about attention, and in some ways prayer is an active choice of what we attend to. So I will read the poem out loud, and I will put it on your screen. And here we go. This is called Revelation by Jacqueline Kudler. Or Jacqueline, I don't know. For every exile who walked out of Egypt between walls of water, for everyone who remembered the feel of sea bottom underfoot, the sibilant roar of water rearing on the right, on the left, someone forgot. Someone scanning the dry horizon for a well, or already mourning the musky smell of autumn in her father's fig trees, forgot the hosannas and the bitter waters of Marah, and by the bitter waters of Marah forgot the flash of dancing feet, the shimmer of timbrels. For every proselyte at Sinai, someone never heard the horns at all. Someone turned back from the mountain to bank the fire, feed the baby, steal a secret moment with another. Revelation begins in attention, while the elders trembled before the word of God flowing down the scorched north flank of Sinai. Someone, rising from a last long embrace, gazed into the rapt face of the beloved and saw that it was good. I love this poem because there's this idea in Midrash that there were a number of Israelites who didn't leave Egypt, who couldn't remove themselves from slavery. And there's this other idea in Midrash that there's this story of the Israelites are walking through the sea, and some of them are noticing this incredible miracle that's happening, but some of them are looking only at their feet and complaining about how their sandals are getting stuck in the mud. And miracle is so much about what we pay attention to, what we notice. That's the whole point of that Nisim B'chol Yom moment that I do every Shabbat that I'm here, is that it's about noticing the miracles that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. And I love this line that says, revelation begins in attention, that in order to receive, the first thing we have to do is attend. But I also love that this poem is not judgmental of the various reasons why one might choose not to or be unable to attend, right? I love the idea that someone had to turn away from Mount Sinai to feed a baby, right? That sometimes we're not able to attend and it's not our choice, right? Sometimes we're not able to be present and that's not our fault, right? All of us know, many of us know, in this year of working from home and dealing with all the things that are home, pets and screaming children and all of those things, that there are some moments that we cannot attend to exclusively because we have these other responsibilities. And then there's this idea in this poem of this stealing a secret moment with another. So there's this person who has looked away from Sinai. I picture it's two teenagers who have snuck away from Sinai to go make out under a bush. But then there is this moment at the end where someone rising from a last long embrace, that maybe that teenager, gazes into the rapt face of the beloved. Not entirely clear from this poem whether the beloved is the person that they are stealing the secret moment with, or whether the beloved should have a capital B and be the beloved that is God. But for a moment, even in that moment where they have snuck away, they are gazing into the eyes of something sacred, something human, something transcendent. And then there is this line that steals from Genesis that says, and saw that it was good. In the moments where we are able to attend, even in an interaction with our children, with our pet, with our partner, with our loved one over FaceTime, in those moments where we are able to attend, to pay attention, to notice, we will find that we are hearing the echoes of creation and the Creator, and we will find, God willing, that it is good. So that is one beautiful poem from our Haggadah, and we'll hear a few more as we move through. And we are going to jump ahead now to page 100 for Psalm 150.
neshama. Tehalelia, tehalelia, kol neshama. Tehalelia, tehalelia, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Chatzi Kaddish, page 106.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד יפרח ירצה וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, וחיי כל בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם למלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל. שמי דקדושה ברכו לעילם מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן מעלמה, ואמרו אמן. יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך, לעולם ועד. המבורך, המבורך, לעולם ועד.
Another poem for for Yotzer Or this morning, and this poem is a reminder that Pesach marks the beginning of spring, and our awareness, as Karen had put it, of this. We look out at the world and we see all this stuff that looks dead, particularly in this year after the freeze, but every year when you look out in the world, and less so in Houston because there's a lot of things that just grow all year, but things look brown and things surprise you as buds start to appear on them. And this is a poem a little bit about that. So this is called Early April by Jessica Greenbaum. The cyclists can't help seeming self-important, and the daffodils can't help interloping on the edge of dark gardens. The shaggy birches can't help tending them in peeling robes, and the purple crocuses can't help from clashing with the orange noise of birds. The spring can't help its interruptions, and the morning can't help its illusion of beginning again, and the wanderer can't help squandering the dimes of her small fortune, or wish the morning could be the first line of a drawing her daughter began again. What if this was our first day, and the bulb of the heart humming in frost all those months came up as you were riding by, the orange birds requesting your attention, and the first light falling on your dark eyes, knowing it was good. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot. Continue now on page 113 at the top of the page. Once or twice in a lifetime, a man or woman may choose a radical leaving, having heard Lech Lecha, go forth. God disturbs us towards our destiny by hard events and by freedom's now urgent voice, which explode and confirm who we are. We don't like leaving, but God loves becoming. Baruch atah Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy and all the love we have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name. You will know that you are one. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Please be seated, page 116.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
As we prepare for Mi Chamocha, I want to offer yet another poem from the Haggadah, and this one serves as an invitation to think about our role in liberation. And this poem is called Imagine the Angels of Bread by Martin Espada. If the abolition of slave manacles began as a vision of hands without manacles, then this is the year. If the shutdown of extermination camps began as imagination of a land without barbed wire or the crematorium, then this is the year. If every rebellion began with the idea that conquerors on horseback are not many-legged gods, that they too drown if plunged in the river, then this be the year. We offer now a prayer for the hope that this can be the year of liberation and possibility, not just for us, but for all who seek it, with the words of Micha Mocha on page 122. We continue now with the Amidah, which begins on page 124, and invite you to rise in body or spirit.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot V'imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Vezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rab Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar, michamocha bal givurot, umidol melech, melech mimit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. נקדש את שמך בעולם, בשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מלכנו, הוא מושיענו וכו ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיך, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ונצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, לשבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated as we join together in the middle of page 137. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw near to life, to peace, and to joy. May we find to rest, holiness in our deeds, worthy in our study of Torah. Let us feed on the love of goodness. Let us drink from the love of goodness. Restrain our thirst for excess and cleanse our hearts to serve life well. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw near in life, in peace, and in joy. Baruch atah Adonai she'otecha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. We take a few moments now for silent prayer and gratitude.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יהודי
We continue now with our brief Seder Kriyat Torah, our service for the reading of Torah. A few brief thoughts about the Torah portion this week. We are in Parshat Vayikra, the very beginning of the book of Leviticus. And in Torah study this morning, I said that it is not fair to say that sacrifice is the primary theme of the book of Leviticus. And we talked about how holiness is the primary theme of the book of Leviticus. But there is still, I want you not to get me wrong, a lot of sacrifice in the book of Leviticus. And what I want to talk about this morning is making a little bit of sense of the sacrifice. The sacrifices that are described in the book of Leviticus seem very foreign to us, not only because the sacrificial system ended with the destruction of the Second Temple, but because it is so far removed from the ways in which we relate to God. And we're going to spend a great many weeks over this whole book dealing with Torah portions that deal with sacrifice. And I suspect that your clergy will lovingly avoid the topic as much as possible because it is so foreign to us over the next few months. But I wanted to spend some time here at the beginning of Leviticus asking what is this whole sacrifice system about, and what is it that we might learn from it. So the first thing that I have, I brought a little bit of a source sheet to talk this through, is the very beginning of the book and the very beginning of our parsha, and the section that I'll be reading from in just a minute. And just to sort of set the scene, this is the kind of stuff you can find all throughout Leviticus, right? That Moses is supposed to speak to the people and tell them, when any of you present an offering of cattle to the Eternal, you shall choose his offering from the herd of his flock, and if his offering is a burnt offering, the herds, he shall make this offering as a male without blemish. He shall bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting for the Eternal. He shall lay his hands upon its head. The bull shall be slaughtered before the Eternal, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall offer the blood, etc., etc., etc. This is how a great portion of the book of Leviticus works. And then there is this interesting contrast, which is when we get to the prophets seem to be rejecting this whole sacrificial system. A whole bunch of the Torah, not just Leviticus, all sections of the Torah deal with the questions of how to make sacrifices to God. And then when we get to the prophetic books, the prophets seem to spend a lot of time telling people they shouldn't do sacrifices, or at least not do them in the way that they're doing them. Amos famously says that God says, I loathe, I spurn your festivals. I am not appeased by your solemn assemblies. If you offer me burnt offerings or your meal offerings, I will not accept them, says God. I will pay no heed to your gifts of fatlings. Spare me the sound of your hymns, and let me not hear the music of your lutes, but let justice well up like waters, righteousness like a mighty stream. Words at the end of that passage that may be familiar to you. But Amos isn't just talking about justice is good for justice's sake. God in this passage seems to be saying that justice is more important than the sacrifices. Isaiah, at the very beginning of his call, says, what need have I of all your sacrifices, says the Eternal? I am sated with burnt offerings of ram and suet of fatlings and blood of bulls. I have no delight in lambs and he-goats. God is saying, I don't want your sacrifices. They, as he says later, fill me with loathing. They are a burden to me, says God, right? Wash yourselves clean, put your evil doings away from my sight, cease to do evil, learn to do good, devote yourselves to justice, aid the wrong, uphold the right of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. Isaiah is saying what Amos is saying, which is God is fed up with your sacrifices, and instead you should be doing justice. So this leads us to this question, this sort of troubling question, which is, I don't know how troubled you are by it, but which is like, is it important to do these sacrifices according to the Bible, or is it not important to do these sacrifices? What are these sacrifices about, if we're supposed to do them? And the first thing that we need to understand is we need to understand that the Torah does not invent the concept of sacrifice. It is something that was common in the ancient Near East, but Torah does reinvent the concept of sacrifice. How sacrifice works in the Torah is fundamentally different than how it worked in the rest of the ancient Near East. In order to understand that, you need to understand that the Hebrew Bible functions as a bit of a polemic against the practices of all those other cultures. Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks writes in his book Covenant and Conversation, the Hebrew Bible is a sustained battle against three things: idolatry, which is the system; myth, which is the narrative that justifies the system; and pagan rituals, the acts that sustain the system. The world against Judaism, against which Judaism is a protest, is one that saw the universe as an arena of conflicting powers seen as gods. They fought amongst themselves and were at best indifferent and at worst actively hostile to human beings. The universe of idolatry and myth is one in which chaos and destruction are constant threats, and the human order is vulnerable and always at risk. Sacrifice in pagan society is the way humans placate the gods. It is how they seek to neutralize the vast forces of nature that seem constantly to threaten the security and stability of human life. They are expressions of fear. So this is really important. In the ancient Near East, there are these battles happening between all of these gods. And human beings live at the sort of whim and will of the gods, and they live in fear of those gods. And the way they appeal to those gods so that their battles between them not affect human beings is by offering sacrifice, is by giving the gods something that the gods want as a way of appeasing those gods. But that is not how sacrifice works in Judaism. Deuteronomy says, the eternal your God is supreme, eternal, the great and mighty, the awesome God who shows no favors and takes no bribes. You cannot pay off this God. There's no amount of rams that you can offer, cows that you can offer that's going to matter anything to God. And King David in Chronicles sums this up, I think, most succinctly when he says, who am I? Who are my people that we should make we should have the means to make such a free will offering? But all is from you, and it is your gift that we have given to you, right? If everything in the universe belongs to one single God, if God created everything, if there's no battle between gods, then there is nothing that is outside of God. So to give to God is a somewhat absurd proposition. To give a gift to God is weird because, like, everything is God's. Everything that we have is on loan to God. Even our souls are a loan from God. And so to give God back what God has given us seems to King David in that Chronicles text an absurd proposition. So what is it that we are doing if we are not appeasing God, if we are not bribing God? And Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, in his article, says that instead that we should think of it as what happens when a child gives a gift to a parent. Many, I would imagine all of us have had the experience of when we were little, making some kind of Valentine's Day gift or Hanukkah gift or something for our parent, crafting them, and then when we got a little older, we would have this very strange task. I don't know about you, I would, which is to get my mom a Mother's Day gift, right? Me, the 13-year-old who has an allowance that I've been given by my parents, is supposed to spend some of that allowance on a gift for my mom, knowing very little about what an adult woman would want for Mother's Day. And I would try and have to figure this out. And why do we engage in that ritual? It is certainly not because there was anything that I could buy for my mother that she couldn't buy for herself, right? She might not have, and she probably, many of the gifts I got her, I'm certain she didn't want. But it was not that I was giving her something she couldn't get for herself, but that I was doing it as an expression of gratitude and love. that you do so much for me, and I want to demonstrate that I recognize that you do and give so much to me by giving you something of myself, of the allowance that I am supposed to spend on myself. I'm going to give to you in an effort to show you that I appreciate you. And on the grandest scale, says Rabbi Sachs, the sacrificial system functions this way as well. That sacrifices were not about appeasing God, they were not about getting on God's good side, but rather they were about demonstrating to God our love and commitment towards God by giving something of ourselves. The thing that the prophets seem to be complaining about in passages like the one that I showed you from Isaiah and Amos is they're complaining that the people thought that they could behave inappropriately in the world and then get off by paying a bribe to God, by bribing the judge. The thing that it seems that is so deeply offensive to the prophets is the idea that you would misunderstand what the sacrifice was, that you could behave unjustly in the world, and that God would forgive you if you gave sacrifices. No, says the prophet, God abhors, God hates that kind of sacrifice, because that's not what the sacrifice is about. The Hebrew word for sacrifice, korban, comes from the root karov, which means closeness or to draw close. Korbanot are sacrifices, and the verb is lehakriv, to draw close. Our sacrifices are a way in which we draw close to God. The great sort of irony of the system that the Torah presents, that is the distinction from the ancient Near East, is when gods are small, when there are multiple gods and gods are small, it's not hard to be near them. You just go to their domain. God has this particular temple, and you go to that particular temple, and then you're near to that God. But a God who is everywhere and everything and is transcendent and is bigger than time and space altogether is a God who it is very difficult to be close to, because there is no place where God is more. Right? It is not that God is only in the temple or only at the synagogue. God is everywhere at all times. And the gift, the present that God is giving us is the ability to lehakriv, the ability to draw near to God, the ability to experience closeness to God by this act of tenderness. Sachs talks about the sort of distance, the difference between justice and love. Justice is something general, something universal, something that exists outside of ourselves. But love is immanent, it is personal, it is right up with us. And we are given this opportunity to feel and experience and demonstrate a reciprocal relationship of love through the sacrifices. To tell God we love God and to know God loves us back. And the experience of giving a gift to your parent is an experience of trying to find a way to tell them we love and appreciate them. And when they receive the thing that I bought my mother that she didn't want, and she says, "Oh, thank you, I love it," right? That is her way of showing me back the love that I am giving her. And there is something incredibly humble in a God that would receive our sacrifices, our demonstrations of gratitude, in the same way that a parent humbles themselves when they say, and if you had a parent who didn't say this, I apologize, but who say, "Oh, this is wonderful, how beautiful," to the terrible art you made or the thing you bought they didn't want, because they understand the gesture. They understand the emotions that are trying to be expressed with that gift, that it's not about giving to them something they don't have, it's about saying something. And so most parents are able to say, "Thank you, I love it," even if they don't, because they understand that. And in the time after the temple, sacrifice gets replaced by three things. Sacrifice gets replaced by, as the Mishnah says, Torah, Avodah, and Gimilut Chasadim. Torah, study. Avodah, which means work, but here means the work of prayer. Study, prayer, and Gimilut Chasadim, giving of a generous heart, or tzedakah. right? So through our we used to be able to show God we loved God and experience God's love back through sacrifice. Because of the destruction of the temple, because we don't do sacrifices anymore, and even in the time before the sacrifices, there was a move away from that being the only way to show God we love God and the only way to experience God's love. And now we have these three tools, right, which are equally transcendent, even if they are a little less visceral. Then you had the animal, you give up the animal, you see the animal go off to slaughter, you eat the animal, all those things that are like in our bodies. Now we have to sort of engage in these acts of metaphor that are obfuscated in some way, but we have study, we have engaging with Jewish texts, we have learning deep and rich values of our people, and engaging with these ideas that have shaped the way that Jews have lived for millennia. We have prayer. We have offering these words that, as we talked about before, these words that have truth in them, even if we don't agree with every word, but we try and engage with the poetry. We try and tackle the tough subjects. We try and open ourselves up to possibility in prayer. And we have gimilut chasadim. We have acts of loving kindness. We have doing things for other people in the world, particularly people who are vulnerable, who are in need of it. And when we engage in those three things, we have the opportunity to engage in the same thing that our ancestors engaged in, which is the opportunity to be demonstrating to God that we love God by opening our minds in study, by opening our hearts in prayer, by opening ourselves in acts of loving kindness. We have an opportunity not just to help ourselves, not just to help other people, but actually to give God a present, which is the openness of ourselves, and to receive in that moment also God reaching God's hand back out to us, to receive that love back, to know that we are beloved in through doing those acts. So my hope for us, my prayer for us, as we encounter these difficult and seemingly foreign texts of the sacrifices, as we read through Leviticus and the rest of the books of the Torah, that we know that much more than being about logistics, much more than being about you have to have this animal and you have to sprinkle its blood here and you eat it here, but you don't eat it there, and you eat it by this day and you don't eat it by that day. Much more than being about the logistics and the specifics, that this is really about our spiritual experience of trying to karov, trying to be near to that which is beyond us and bigger than us and transcendent. And we search for ways in our own lives that we can draw near to God by drawing near to our tradition, by drawing near to ourselves, and by drawing near to other people. So with that as our kavanah, as our intention, I will read just a little bit of Torah, read those verses that I showed you before from the book of Leviticus. I will put it back on the screen so that you can follow along if that's the kind of thing you like to do. And I'm feeling much more Torah-like today. My father was unpacking things and found this yad that he thinks my grandparents bought in Israel. And so I'm going to be using an actual yad, which you can't see. So I don't know why I pointed that out, but it makes me feel even more Torah-like. All right, here we go. Vayikra el Moshe, Vaydaber Adonai elav, me'ohel moed lemor. Daber el bnei Israel va'amarta alehem. Adam ki yakriv, there's that word, mikem korban, there it is again, ladonai, minhab hema, minhabakar uminhatson, takrivu, there it is again, et hakorban chem, there it is again. You're getting a theme, I think, now. Im ola korbano min habakar zachar tamin yakrivenu el petach ohel moed yakriv oto lirtzono livnei Adonai v'samach yado al rosh ha'olah v'nirtza lo lechaper alav v'shachat et bein habakar lifnei Adonai v'hikrivu b'nei Aharon hakohanim et hadam v'zarku et hadam al hamizbeach saviv asher petach ohel moed. We come now in our prayer in this moment where we have words of Torah, words of study, words of devotion on our lips, to a moment that we call an Ed Ratzon, a time of God's will. And so we offer a prayer, a Mishaberach prayer for healing, for those who are in need of healing and strength. And I am thinking this morning in particular of the Asian American community, which is reeling and hurting, not only from the attack this past week in Atlanta, but from a year of increased hatred and violence against the Asian community, and a year of feeling a poignancy to the violence and attacks that some folks are reporting also having experienced their whole lives. And in particular, as I said last night, I'm praying for the brokenness that may be being experienced by the Asian members of our own community, of our Emmanuel community, who are suffering at this moment, who are feeling under attack, who are feeling under scrutiny, who are feeling the heartbreak of seeing people who share characteristics with you attacked, and knowing the pain of that. And I want you to know, I want to continue to reiterate that you are beloved members of this community. And if you are feeling particular hurt, that your clergy are here for you, want to hear your stories, want to be a source of strength and support to you. And we want to continue to make this a congregation where everyone who comes through our doors knows the experience of belonging, knows the experience of being beloved, and can feel the power of community. And so as we offer these words of Mishaberach on page 253, we pray for all those in our community who are in need of healing, who are in need of strength, who are in need of wholeness. And we hold particularly those communities who are reeling from this week's events.
May the source of strength, oh, bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And let us say Amen. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures forever. 'Cause the Lord is good, and His mercy endures
A few brief announcements for this Shabbat morning. Our congregation and Waldman Funeral Care will be hosting a pair of events. We'll be continuing our events in the Before I Die series tomorrow at 4 p.m. There's still time to register on our website, so check that out. In the coming days, if you have not already received a package from our congregation, you will be receiving a package, all of our members, with a Passover Seder supplement to use at your at-home Seder observance. Mine's in the other room. I'm really proud of it. It's really fun and cool. And I hope that you will find ways to let it spark conversation however you are planning to observe Seder. Also, as you are making your plans to observe Seder, a reminder that the clergy is hard at work with a video Seder featuring many surprise guests and faces that will hopefully be familiar to you and fun to see. And that will be available by no later than a week from today in the morning, Saturday morning, with the idea that you will use that Seder however you want over the course of Passover. You can watch along with us. You can use it to supplement your Seder. Also, our Seder at Home webpage, which is accessible from our homepage, is a wonderful resource with tons of videos and music and resources, links, and Haggadot and stuff for children, and there's just a wealth of resources there. I really do hope you'll check it out as you are thinking about how you will observe Passover this year. There's a lot there for you to use. And lastly, just a reminder that we are in phase 3 of our reopening plan, which does mean we are able to have limited in-person Shabbat worship in the Bear Sanctuary. If you are interested in attending services in person, you do need to sign up on our website and we close down those registrations the Thursday night before the Friday. So if you'd like to join us on Friday night, just check in and sign up on our website. We would love to have you on a space available basis. With that, we turn now to a moment of memory. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones and those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, life and death. We take a moment now for silent memory. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. Our hearts go out in sympathy to the families of Daniel Dror, Jerry Fischel, and Bill Klein, who've been laid to rest in recent days. We turn to page 294 as we rise together for the words of Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'kadash shemei Rabbah, b'alma divrach yirutei v'almich malchutei, b'chai echon v'yom echon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivorach le'olam omei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnasei, v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha brichu, le'ela mim kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'ne'emata, Damiram be'ama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen.
We move now from Kaddish to Kiddush as we offer this blessing over the Shabbat one.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. L'chaim.
L'chaim. And Hamotzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Amen. Enjoy it while you can. It's the last week of birth. Get all those carbs in while you can. For our closing closing song, then we'll do a benediction. Yeah?
Sure.
Or the other way. I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, closing song. What do you got planned for us? You have something fun, I think, for our closing song today.
Something new.
Ooh.
Something about children of freedom going into Passover. So. Delivered on shores with sand in our shoes, homeward bound, survivors in spirit with nothing to lose. We have found our land, our life, children of freedom, sing the freedom must always ring. Children of freedom, ring, repairing the world through freedom's eyes. Children of freedom, ring, the freedom must always ring. Children of freedom, rise, repairing the world through freedom's eyes.
I like that line, repairing the world through freedom's eyes. All right, our closing benediction. I couldn't resist one more poem from the new Haggadah. If you haven't picked up your copy, it might not be too late. I think you can get them on Amazon. But one more poem that is, I think, a lovely thought to hold in our hearts as we prepare this week for our Seders, about what it means to return to Seder. So here it is. It's called Passover Miracle by Merle Feld, and it's for Kara Tav. That we find our spring selves again, shed the thick protective layers of winter that shield but separate us from the world out there. We sit at the table tired, yes, from the work of preparation, but hoping to be refreshed, hoping in spirit to be refreshed. Sitting at the Seder table, we encounter our younger selves, wide-eyed, asking questions. We become each year once again the four sons, daughters, childlike, spring-like, ready each year once again to go out of Egypt with nothing but a pack on our backs, ready to walk once again out into the wilderness in search of our freedom and our God. May we all find ourselves with childlike wonder, and this, as we approach this Passover Seder, may we find ourselves ready to receive the gift that is the liberation from all the Egypts of our lives. May we be able to draw near to God. May we be able to draw near to each other, even if we have to draw near to each other from a distance, so that we may know the blessing that is celebrating freedom. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom, a meaningful and joyful and restful day. Shabbat Shalom, Barbara. It's wonderful to be with you as always.
Shalom. Children of freedom, sing that freedom must always ring. Children of freedom, rise, repairing the world through freedom's eyes. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.